This microscopic visualization shows amyloid plaques aggregating across a neural network. The traditional medical model is a reactive one, intervening after a patient reports symptoms. But the biological reality is that pathology often progresses silently for decades. By the time clinical symptoms trigger a diagnosis, the primary window for early intervention has already closed. Predictive care focuses instead on identifying subtle, coordinated biological shifts before they manifest as a crisis. It transitions healthcare from static, cross-sectional snapshots of a patient's health toward the mapping of dynamic, longitudinal trajectories. We see this in a timeline splitting into two paths. The lower path is standard reactive care. The upper path represents a digital twin simulation, a virtual replica of the patient. By processing historical and real-time biometric data, this model forecasts physiological changes years in advance. Using these generative models, clinicians can identify risk factors for sepsis hours before symptoms appear, or map the trajectory of Alzheimer's cognitive decline decades before physical manifestation. This approach changes the patient's role from a passive recipient of emergency treatment to an active participant in preventative care. It aligns the economic basis of medicine with value-based outcomes, rather than the volume of treatments provided. Deploying generative models for early disease forecasting introduces specific systemic and architectural challenges. The first hurdle is accuracy. Clinical data is complex and disjointed, split between high-resolution imaging, intricate genomic sequences, and unstructured text in clinical notes. Integrating these incompatible formats into a single predictive engine is a significant engineering challenge. The second hurdle is trust. High-performing neural networks often operate as uninterpretable black boxes. If a clinician cannot see the logic behind a model's prediction, they cannot responsibly integrate it into their decision-making process. The third hurdle is privacy. Training robust models requires massive datasets, but global privacy laws strictly prohibit moving sensitive health records into a central server for processing. Realizing the predictive hospital requires a new technical stack built to handle these constraints: multimodal fusion, explainable AI, and federated deep learning. This diagram shows a neural network that processes only a single input, a brain MRI. Unimodal models like this diverge from actual clinical practice. A human doctor doesn't look at a scan in a vacuum. They weigh it against laboratory results, behavior, and medical history. To mirror that clinical workflow, the architecture expands to capture multiple data types simultaneously. Multimodal fusion allows the model to process structural imaging, text-based clinical notes, and genomic sequences in a single, unified transformer. Advanced transformer models use a mechanism called cross-modal attention to link these disparate inputs. This allows the model to identify associations between different modalities, such as a structural brain anomaly on an MRI scan and a specific linguistic pattern found in a patient's speech. A primary example of this architecture in use is the Alzheimer's Disease Neuroimaging Initiative, which tracks patients across imaging, genetic, and behavioral datasets. By integrating neuroimaging and neuropsychological data into one model, researchers have achieved area under the curve scores as high as 0.92. This integration is necessary to prevent the model from overfitting to a single data type. Using multiple modalities provides the diagnostic accuracy required for real-world clinical use. However, a high accuracy score is not enough if a physician cannot see how the model reached its conclusion. Clinicians have an epistemic responsibility to their patients. They cannot ethically or legally act on a machine's recommendation without understanding the underlying evidence. Without any transparency, hidden biases can easily infect the logic. In one instance, a model mistakenly used a patient's annual cost of care as a proxy for their disease severity. It assumed that if less money was spent on a patient, they must be less sick. Because of systemic factors, less money is historically spent on minority patients. The model's logic resulted in minority profiles being filtered into low-risk categories, despite having medical conditions identical to those of white patients who were classified as high risk. Explainable AI, or XAI, provides the layer needed to audit these models. It moves the technology out of the black box and into a space where its reasoning can be verified. XAI tools like SHAP and saliency maps identify which specific features driven a model's global performance and provide local, per-patient explanations. A doctor can see exactly which lab value or image feature triggered a specific risk score. This establishes a human-in-the-loop workflow. Physicians can audit a model's logic, ensuring that predictions are based on clinical evidence rather than false statistical proxies. To achieve this level of accuracy, models must be trained on diverse data sourced from hospitals across the globe. But the current regulatory reality makes this difficult. Global frameworks like HIPAA and GDPR prohibit moving sensitive genomic and EHR data across borders into a single centralized database. Federated deep learning solves this by moving the model to the data, rather than the data to the model. In this diagram, the raw patient records stay locked within the firewalls of individual hospitals. During the local training phase, each hospital trains the global model on its own private records. The patient's raw data never leaves the hospital's secure local environment. In the secure aggregation phase, only the mathematical updates, the gradients, are returned to a central server. The server combines these updates to improve the global model without ever accessing an individual patient's file. To prevent adversaries from reverse engineering these mathematical updates, the system uses differential privacy. This adds cryptographic noise to the data, making it impossible to trace an update back to a specific person in the training set. Testing shows that these privacy safeguards result in a performance drop of only 1 to 2%. This is an acceptable trade-off for a system that maintains total data sovereignty while delivering high diagnostic accuracy. The transition of these technologies into the clinic is guided by a specific set of international standards. In 2026, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration and the European Medicines Agency established 10 joint principles for good AI practice. These mandate that AI systems in medicine must be human-centric, risk-aware, and built with clear data governance. Under these principles, predictive algorithms are legally classified and regulated as software as a medical device, or SAMD. Successful deployment requires building the technical stack, multimodal fusion, XAI, and federated learning, specifically to satisfy these legal requirements. This creates a challenge for regulators. AI models are designed to learn and change as they process new data, but medical devices usually require strict reapproval for any modification. To solve this, regulators developed the Predetermined Change Control Plan, or PCCP. A PCCP allows a deployed model to undergo continuous updates. Processing new data, it refines weights automatically within pre-approved boundaries. If an update attempts to push the model outside its pre-approved risk limits, the plan rejects it, ensuring the model evolves safely under human constraints. The integration of multimodal fusion, explainable AI, federated learning, and change control plans provides the structural framework necessary to scale precision medicine. By combining these technologies with established legal principles, healthcare systems can move from managing illness to forecasting and maintaining health.